Bribery, employment irregularities, abuse of power and embezzlement of funds are just some of the issues that are often blamed for the lack of service delivery at municipal level. The Tracy from the Public Affairs Research Institute believes other issues are also at play. She joins us now to talk about this conversation. Tracy, welcome to Daytime Update. Let's begin first with corruption and work our way through the various issues then, the various factors impacting the ability of municipalities to deliver services. How much is corruption actually to blame?
Good afternoon. Well, that's a very difficult question to answer definitively, and it varies enormously across municipalities. So I think we need to understand that there are some municipalities where corruption is absolutely rife and endemic and undermines everything that the municipality is trying to do, but there are many other municipalities where actually there's very little corruption. And sometimes the official data is a little misleading when we look in the annual audit reports. You know, irregular expenditure is not a proxy for corruption. It's often really just very minor failures to comply with the details of supply chain management. So it varies enormously across municipalities. And I think although everyone would agree that you know, any form of corruption is to be avoided, we must remember that comparatively speaking, local government, there's much, much less corruption in terms of rand terms or money terms in local government than there is, for example, in the state-owned enterprises, historically like Eskom and Transnet and places like that.
And that's why you said we need a review, in fact, of the current governance framework at municipalities. Where are the greatest weaknesses and where do you think we should make the most immediate changes in that overhaul?
I do think that one of the most important weaknesses in local government is in fact the entire structural base of local government. So local municipalities in aggregate are intended to raise almost all of their operating expenditure from the profit on the sale of services like electricity and water and rates and taxes. And all the most important things, salaries, maintenance of infrastructure, all of those cost items are intended to be paid out of that. But when we look at who is intended to support this function, we see that in fact the whole system depends on very poor households supporting the system. We need to remember that more than half of all South African households live in poverty. 25% of all households don't have enough total monthly income to buy a basic nutritious basket of food. So the entire system, local government, was envisaged as this developmental space. It has a massive mandate. It is responsible for many, many very important functions, and almost all of the funding for that has to come from largely poor households. And you know, we do think that this is one of the fundamental flaws. In order for local government to operate effectively, it's got to extract money out of poor households that desperately need that money to pay for food and transport and rent.
And the question, as ever, when that is raised is, if not from residents, where should the money come from?
Well, you know, I'm very much a person who's usually agnostic about what the solution is. I try not to think what the solution is. I think it's much more important to get a very good understanding of exactly what the problem is. And the problems in local government are complex. Unfortunately, people have got a preference for simple narratives. They want to know this is the one thing that's wrong, and if we fix this, that will fix it. But the problems are much more complex. And until we get a good understanding on what the problem is, then we're not going to put in place any kind of solutions. But what is quite clear is that the current model of local government is not working. It's failing in many key respects. It's not keeping pace with the required maintenance of infrastructure. Conservative estimates are that we have a 200 billion rand infrastructure maintenance backlog in water and sanitation and a 200 billion rand infrastructure maintenance in the electricity distribution sector, with absolutely no plan or no idea whatsoever of how that is going to be funded. We have very poor oversight and governance in many municipalities, and often there isn't the political will to do anything about that. There's limited involvement of local communities in many instances in decision making. The free basic services program has been a total failure. Most households that are meant to benefit from it don't. So there are many, many, many problems, and we need to sit down and really seriously think about whether the current structure, the functional structure, the number of municipalities we have, the powers and functions of municipalities, and whether the fiscal framework is actually serving the purpose of local government or whether it isn't.
And people, and by people I have referred to those who run municipalities, have been put right at the center, right, of the failing of many municipalities in this country. And you wonder, even if there were to be an overhaul, what success it would have if the right people are not in the right positions to do the work. So the system would still be vulnerable to incompetence as well as people who act quite deliberately, i.e. corruption and mismanagement.
So once again, it's a very mixed bag. There are many municipalities in South Africa that are staffed with very well-skilled and qualified and very hard-working people who are doing their best under very difficult circumstances. There are thousands of people in local government like that. There are, of course, also many people in local government who shouldn't be in their positions, who don't meet the minimum qualifications. And we do have minimum qualification criteria for municipal managers and chief financial officers. Unfortunately, somewhere around 30 to 40% of municipalities don't comply with those regulations. And so far there has been a very limited attempt to make people comply with those regulations. So, once again, we have a situation, we have some municipalities that are doing all the right things but are still struggling because it's really difficult for them to raise revenue from their very poor local communities. But there's also a group of municipalities that simply avoid complying with legislation. And to date, the state has had very, very little success in fact, forcing compliance.
Let me circle back to corruption for a moment, because often when we talk about corruption in government, be it local and national level, we often think of the big contracts, the bribery, but it manifests, doesn't it, in the day-to-day, from nepotism that's taking place in the appointment of people, for example, to some of those very crucial positions, to even the lowest level employee, and so on. And so the cycle continues.
Yes, I think, there's no doubt that local government in aggregate is under severe financial pressure. I think we could say that 3/4, even more, municipalities in South Africa are under severe financial pressure. So it's incredibly important that those municipalities are very clear and about what their priorities are in spending money. So obviously any amount of money that goes to corruption is money that doesn't go to maintaining the water infrastructure, paying bulk suppliers, making sure that services are delivered. But, in addition to corruption, there are also examples where municipalities are spending their money on things that are clearly not priorities, directly related to service delivery. And I think that those things are just important. If you're spending money on some kind of frivolous activity, you might have complied with all of the legislation, and so it's not corruption. But at the same time, that is money that would have been much better used in the municipality for something else. So the idea of what municipalities actually choose to spend their money on is sometimes as important, if not more important, than corruption. And there is supposed to be a lot of consultation with communities before a budget is approved in a municipality. The law says that municipalities are supposed to consult with residents before the budget is passed. But of course we know that doesn't happen. The municipality puts the budget together and they kind of present it to us, and we get to say whether we like it or not. And frankly, no one really cares if we don't like it. So there's not much effort in many municipalities to make sure that every single cent that is spent in the municipality is directly related to improving people's lives and to improving service delivery.
So it's basically about getting the basics right, Tracy.
Yeah, I mean, everything in life is about getting the basics right, isn't it? I think, but we can say that, but on the other hand, a municipality is a very complex place. If we go to even the smallest municipalities, the things that municipality is responsible for is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different functions. We think about water and sanitation and electricity, but we need to remember that a municipality is responsible for the land use management and land use planning of every single bit of land that falls under the municipality. They're responsible for all sorts of business licensing and business management. They're responsible for indigent policies. They're responsible for hundreds and hundreds of different functions. And the mandate of local government has increased disproportionately. And when if we go to a big metro, we have lots of departments to do these things. You go into a small municipality, you'll have one person who's desperately trying to do 3 or 4 things. There's a huge regulatory burden on municipality. There are people in municipalities who do nothing but report to the rest of government what the municipality has done. That's added enormously to the municipality's cost base, is writing endless reports for all other parts of government, endless plans. Every year there's a law about a new policy and a new plan that the municipality has to do. So for a lot of reasons, a municipality has become a place where a lot of people, and often you've got to pay those people money because they've got to have certain skills, who are in fact just compiling reports for the rest of government.
Tracy Leisure, good to speak to you. Thank you.